Hey friendly neighbors, today's missing class is all about how to live above fear. Liz Gilbert talks about living above fear in Big Magic. And what she explains is that we will always have fear in our lives. There will always be times when we're afraid, but we can choose to live above fear by taking action in the face of fear, even though we're afraid. That's what courage is. She doesn't let fear hold her back. When fear comes knocking on the door, it's like, oh, hi, old friend. She's used to fear, but she is determined to continue to take action in the face of fear and to shape her life into the one she wants to live, regardless of fear. And that's living above fear. I found that in my life, my past abuse has really manifested in present fear. But I've finally gotten to the point by doing a lot of work over the years where I don't feel afraid anymore like I used to. This isn't something I ever thought I would talk about, but my whole intention with Missing Class is to share my story, share experiences from my life that are really personal, things I haven't spoken about publicly before, things I never thought I would talk about at all. But now I know that I can use my experiences to help other people. I choose to take the negative energy of my past and convert it into positive energy in my present that can help other people feel less alone and hopefully help them feel inspired in their own struggles. People who have survived what I have, similar things, people who can relate, to help them feel more empowered and really create their dream life. When I was 8, my ma and I moved to an apartment across from a neighbor who began to sexually abuse me when I was 9. And he abused me for about 3 years. So beginning around age 9 to when I was, I think, almost 12. What he could see when we moved in, and he came across the street to meet us the day we were moving in, is that Ma was a single Ma. She was, when I was 8, she was like 25, 26. She did not want to be a mom. He could see that she was checked out. He could see that she was neglectful. He could see that I didn't have a father. He can see that there was no dad in the picture, and I didn't have brothers and sisters. And he could see that I was a shy kid and I didn't really speak much. He could see that I was a target. All of these things added up to him as an easy target, someone who wouldn't tell because they would be too afraid, because he would make sure that I was too afraid to say anything. And what was interesting is that when I was 9 years old, he told me that he was going to attack me when I was older. And I sort of was so afraid, as any 9-year-old kid would be, of that attack, that it actually lived in my cells until I was 40 years old. Until I was 40 years old, I had nightmares constantly that he was going to come and hunt me down and kill me. What was so fascinating about that is I thought over all those years that I was the only one who would be, I guess, disturbed enough to think that a man who threatened to attack me when I was 9 would hunt me down and kill me legit until I was like 40 years old. I thought I was the only one who felt like that. But actually, later I found out that I wasn't the only one. And in fact, later on when I spoke to lawyers about what happened, they told me, oh yeah, I hear this all the time from victims of childhood abuse. When I was 28, I had this dentist I just found through my insurance. I was a teacher at the time and I just looked at the dental insurance brochure and I just picked a dentist who was close to school that I could walk to. So I didn't really think much about it when I went for my first checkup, and this dentist started telling me things that didn't sound right about my teeth, because all dentists before this guy were saying that I had great teeth and they were, some of the best teeth they'd ever seen. And like, I had never had a problem except for a small cavity when I was 14. So I walked in there with like one filling, and like, that's the only work I'd ever had done, knowing that I had healthy teeth. And he was like, oh yeah, there are all these problems. We're gonna have to pull your top wisdom teeth because you have cavities in the back 2 molars, and like, those are really deep. So then you might have to have root canals. And then if you do, you might have to have crowns put in. And I was like, but I'm 28 and I have really good teeth. So it didn't really make sense, but I trusted him, because I trust doctors and dentists and people who are in the profession of taking care of human beings. I tend to trust them. So, I mean, for months, he did all this crazy work. I was in pain constantly every day. And at night when I put my head on the pillow to go to sleep, I had so much pain it was hard to sleep. And this was when I was teaching, so I was waking up at like 4:45 in the morning and just like exhausted all day because of it. So finally, after like months of all this work that I really knew in my heart was unnecessary, but I just felt afraid to really speak up and challenge and say anything, until finally at one point I was sitting in the dentist chair and I said, can I see the x-rays and the charts and the evidence that I needed all this work? And he started freaking out. He started yelling at me, how dare you accuse me of inventing things? And he had charged me thousands of dollars out of pocket for a procedure I found out later through my insurance only costed me $80, should have costed me $80. He charged me thousands of dollars out of pocket. So I did eventually get all that refunded, but at the time it was really traumatic. I was crying in the chair, and this was right after 9/11. So I was in a place where I was just afraid all the time anyway. And this just added to my overall fear. And it really brought back my past fear, because the fear that I carried in my cells for so long was still there. Your cells remember. They remember past trauma, and it manifests in physical pain. So after this altercation with like him yelling at me and crying in the chair, and then finding out that he overcharged me, the owner of the dental practice called me at home, and I thought, oh, how nice that he like is so concerned to call me at home, when in fact later, of course, I realized the only reason he called me is because he was afraid I was going to sue him, because of course I had a case. But what was so interesting again too, and I keep calling these things interesting and fascinating because it's just, to me, really interesting and fascinating to understand parts of your journey as you are on them, and then really compare later with the knowledge and insight you've gained by turning pain into strength, but then also by doing a lot of work on personal improvement, when you can look back later and just say, instead of saying like, oh, I was so crazy to think this, or how could I have done that, or this was so wrong of me to think, I just really frame it in a way that it was interesting to me that at the time, when I was 28, I thought if I sued for malpractice, and of course I had a case, and of course I would have won, there will be a drive-by shooting. Like, the dentist will arrange for somebody to actually kill me one night when I was coming home from school. Like, that's what I 100% believed, and I lived in fear so much of that I didn't say anything. I typed up like everything that had happened just to have it documented in case I ever did use it, but I never did. So when I found out that I wasn't afraid, in a bubble, I wasn't the only one who was afraid of being killed by a person in power, who was intimidating or bullying or abusing me. was when I reached out to 2 lawyers when I heard about the Child Victims Act. So this was last year, this was 2019. One morning I heard on NPR that this Child Victims Act had passed. And what the Child Victims Act does is it extends the statute of limitations, which was previously 5 years, for bringing legal action against a childhood sexual abuser to age 55. So now in New York and New Jersey, and I'm sure this is true in other states as well by now, you can take legal action against your sexual abuser up until you are age 55. And the first thought I had was, oh, that's great for other people. Like, I could never do it because I was too afraid of like naming him and like saying all the details about what happened and having all that documented. And what if he, of course he's going to find out because legal action against him, and then what's he going to do? It was the fear of telling the details and naming him that kept me from even thinking about taking any action under the Child Victims Act. But I thought, oh, that's so great for other people that they can do that. This is wonderful. But then a few months later, I heard that it also passed in New Jersey. So when I first heard about it, it was just for New York, but I'm originally, even though I've lived in New York City for 24 years now, I'm originally from New Jersey, and that's where the abuse happened. When I heard that it also passed in New Jersey, a couple months later, I thought, maybe I do have the strength to do this. I'm afraid still. I don't want to come forward and have to explain all the details about what happened and name him and all of these other things that had scared me for decades. But maybe I am strong enough now that I can try. So I found these 2 excellent lawyers who specialize in childhood sexual abuse cases. And I could tell from the first day I called their office that they were really compassionate, caring people who really wanted justice, right? They were people who were speaking out against people who didn't have a voice or were too afraid to really come forward and doing the hard work to speak up and stand up for injustice for other people who had been abused. And I could tell when their assistant was so compassionate and kind over the phone. And she said to me, "Can you tell me his name?" She said, "Only if you're able to. Are you able to tell me his name?" And the first thought I had when she said that was, that is so sweet for people who would have a problem, would have trouble, would be afraid to actually say the name of their abuser, because, you know, for some people that would be really hard to say. But of course I could say it because it's just a name, and like, this was a really long time ago, so no big deal. And when I started to say his name, I could immediately feel physical symptoms from that fear that my cells remember. I said Vito, and immediately my throat got tight and I could feel my heart racing. And then I said Telesco, and like, even now saying it, like, my heart's racing and my mouth is getting kind of dry. And I just couldn't believe that I was still experiencing those kind of physical symptoms just saying his name after all these years. But also I felt so empowered that I was able to say his name. Like, I had just named Vito Telesco. And this is the first time I'm naming him in public, or really at all, except for this case when I was speaking to the lawyer's office. That to me is so empowering, to be able to say his name and no longer be afraid that he's going to hunt me down and kill me, and no longer be afraid of what's going to happen, because he abused me. What happened wasn't my fault. He was the person committing a crime. So I told my story. It took about 2 hours in detail to one of the lawyers who documented all of the details. And I couldn't believe that this was the first time I was really giving all of the details. But then again, I could, because it had taken me 46 years. I'm 47 now, and this was last year. It had taken me 46 years to get to the point where I had enough strength to live above fear, to take action in the face of fear, and in great detail tell him everything I remembered. And he was asking for really specific details. It was surprising because it wasn't just about the abuse that happened, but it was like, oh, when you were standing there in the kitchen and he was making you breakfast, and he took out the Velveeta cheese and he was cutting slices, and then he put, like, he had this little container he would put, you know, onion peels and eggshells in and stuff like that. And it was to the right of his kitchen sink with a window that overlooked the porch with, and then there was in the yard, like all of these details of like the physical environment and like what was in the drawer there and like what did he make for breakfast and what, like, because it was actually important to give a full picture of what happened, not only to document the case, but also the more details I gave, I was like, oh yeah. And then I remembered when I was standing in the kitchen one of these Sundays when he was making me breakfast, which is something my mom never did. There was no breakfast at home. There was no breakfast before school. My stomach was growling all day. So I actually looked forward to going over to my neighbor's house, to the person who was abusing me, because he made me breakfast, a big breakfast every Sunday morning. And I looked forward to that breakfast all week. And we were standing in his kitchen and he pressed his lips against my lips and he said, "Does that feel okay?" And I was 9 years old. The moment just came rushing back. It's not that I had forgotten that specific moment, but just the kitchen and the details and the colors and the physical environment. It was all just so interesting, and remembering more details helped me remember even more details about what had happened. Just the validation of hearing that lawyer tell me that he was guilty on 3 counts was enough for me. And just having the strength to tell my story to him was enough for me. I didn't need to move forward with legal action, not only because I found out that now this person, Vito Telesco, has dementia and lives in a facility in Florida. And so in order to move forward with the legal action, I would have had to get a lawyer in Florida. And like, because he has dementia, he wouldn't even remember most likely what had happened anyway. And so that it's very hard to bring a case in that situation. But also, if I did win the case, I would be taking money from his family, who had nothing to do with what happened and probably have no idea of what happened at all. And that didn't align with my values. I think for other survivors of childhood abuse, that could be the right choice for them. But now I just feel empowered. I receive the validation. I have that strength. And now no one can mistreat me in any way anymore. No one can abuse me. No one can bully me. No one can intimidate me. No one has the power to mistreat me in any way anymore because I won't give them that power. That's what it feels like to be empowered, to live above fear. It feels free. I feel like now I can say anything and do anything to live my most authentic life and be exactly who I am and not be afraid to say, this is what happened to me, to help make you feel less alone and help inspire you to become more empowered. I can do that. And even though, yeah, I did feel a little nervous and scared before I started this video, but I feel really good that I'm in the middle of it and I don't edit these. And so, you know, I never know what's going to come up exactly, but I just want you to know that you have this power to shape your life. You can't control what anyone else does, but you can control your reaction. And it's your reaction to people that teaches people how to treat you. You teach people how to treat you by how you react to them. When you first meet someone, you're coming in with a certain energy you're radiating, and they're sort of assessing whether or not you're a kind person and an honest person and a reliable person, and things about your personality. Are you a confident person? Are you someone they can walk all over? Or are you someone who will defend yourself? You want to be able to take action, even when you're afraid, to show people how to treat you. You get what you tolerate. Don't tolerate any mistreatment. You don't deserve to be mistreated. No one does. I was a victim before, but I'm not victimized anymore. That means I don't live in a mindset of feeling sorry for myself and ruminating on what happened and why did that happen to me, and feeling like, oh, that's unfair, and feeling jealous of other people who haven't survived abuse. That's not where I am, because I'm not victimized anymore. I'm a victim of childhood sexual abuse, yes, but now I label myself, I define myself as a strong survivor. A strong survivor is someone who can take their own pain and their own experiences and use that to create strength in order to help other people. That is my purpose. Be fire, be kind, be exactly who you are. I'll see you next time.